You sit there on your Twitter machines. You're too busy on your book of faces. GSN 316 says I just answered your questions. All right, awful Stone Cold Steve Austin impersonations aside, this is episode 316 of hashtag AskGSM, here today for December 18th, 2019, the birthday of Stone Cold Steve Austin. I talked about this last week, but how cool of a coincidence is it that our 316th episode, and this was not planned at all, I did not realize this until I was recording the show last week, that our 316th episode just so happens to fall on the birthday of one Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's pretty fucking cool, sitting here in my Steve Austin shirt as we speak right now. Pretty cool stuff. But nonetheless, we are 1 week out from Christmas. Before we go any further, just a quick heads up. The episode, as of right now, unless something changes, because God knows I've been fucking beyond busy for the past week now. I've literally gone to bed for the last not even 6 or 7 days, like 7 or 8 days. Probably since last Monday. I've gone to bed every day, maybe around 4 a.m., between 2:30 and 4 a.m., because I've been working on shit because I've been so backed up and busy. Because this past weekend alone, I was writing articles like every day. But like this past weekend alone, we had the NWA pay-per-view Into the Fire on Saturday. We had Final Battle on Friday, Final Battle Fallout on Sunday, the TLC pay-per-view on Sunday, which I didn't watch until Monday afternoon with Alexis. So it was pretty crazy, and I'm still catching up on shit that I missed from days ago. So bear with me if you don't see any reviews up for certain shows. They should be up as soon as possible. That being said, though, going back to my original point, I should be pretty busy over the next week still. I'm going to see Star Wars on Friday morning. Might be going somewhere on Friday night. I'm not exactly sure yet. That being SmackDown, actually, at the Barclays Center. I might be going to SmackDown on Friday. I don't know for a fact that I will. That's literally 2 days away. But a friend of mine whose girlfriend works for WWE offered me to come with him. He had a free ticket to go to SmackDown to the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, which is pretty fucking cool. So I might be going to that. Stay tuned for more on that. I'm not 100% sure. I will not know until I'm on my way to the event. So we'll figure that out as it comes along. But for next week's episode, I'm currently planning to put it up on Christmas itself. No one will likely listen just because it's Christmas. You're busy doing probably anything else. But still, you know, I will probably put up the show on Wednesday as we do the Wednesday tradition. But I'll probably be recording the show as of right now, as I tentatively plan, on Monday the 23rd. So I'm going to be asking you guys to start sending your questions as soon as possible. And like I said, either last week or the week before, what I would like to do is make it a Christmas-themed show. And I've already answered a lot of Christmas-themed questions here on the show over the past number of weeks. But if you can send in any Christmas questions, end of the year stuff, that would be awesome. It'll probably be a short show. And I'll put it up on Wednesday after recording it on Monday. Maybe with Alexis, I'm not 100% sure. If I see her around that time, maybe we can record the show together. Other than that, I'm going to try to aim to record it on Monday and have it be up on Wednesday. So if you want to send in a question to the final show of 2019, of the decade even, actually, please start sending them in right now. And it doesn't have to be like anything relevant to the product from Raw. It's not that it doesn't even really matter that I'm not, recording it after Raw, just because Raw was already taped a week ago. I didn't look at the spoilers, but they taped it after Raw on Monday night. It's not going to be a live show. There's no pay-per-views this weekend. There's really nothing to catch up on. So if you send in a question for the final, for the best of 2019 stuff, which I know a few people are waiting until 2020 to do, that would be completely okay. So please start sending that in now so I can start recording on it as soon as possible on Monday. I'll probably be busy wrapping shit that day, but whatever. I still have a lot of gifts to wrap. I have actually wrapped absolutely nothing, and I have to get on that in the next couple of days before SmackDown on Friday and Star Wars that same day. But before we go any further, real quick as well, if you want to vote in the 2019 WWE/NXT Year in Review Awards, please do so right now on nextairwrestling.net. There's a link on the homepage. If you go to the Week in Review panel, there's a drop-down menu to the Year in Review Awards. Vote right there. There's about, I want to say between 12 and 14 categories. There's a lot of categories. I added 2 new ones this year. So I'll be breaking those down next week on Wrestle Rant Radio with Mr. Marceau himself, RJ, for the final show of 2019. We'll be breaking down all the polls, all the results, what you guys voted on as the match of the year, superstar of the year, most disappointing star of the year, show of the year, match of the year, feud of the year, tag team of the year. I'm not sure if I'm repeating stuff now, but yeah, we're breaking down all those categories next Thursday, and that will probably be recorded on Thursday morning and not a day sooner. So, nonetheless, without further ado, let's get started here. If you want to send in a question to the show, please do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up, or your question, comment, whatever, on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get started here first with Brandon A. from YouTube, an absolutely stacked question. He said, "What's up, GSM? You're still wrong about Die Hard, but I like the fact that we can go back and forth on something like that playfully. Which brings me to my first question. What is an issue that most people would consider trivial or insignificant, but you will have a strong response to if they disagreed with you?" Honestly, really nothing. I'm going to be honest with you. The only thing that really comes to mind, just because it's relevant right now, is the Christmas music thing. About listening to Christmas music and watching Christmas movies at least until after Thanksgiving and getting the decorations up and shit like that. That's honestly about it. Otherwise, I really don't give a shit about much anything else. If people have an opinion, that's fine. Except for the Christmas stuff, that's just plain old wrong. You can have an opinion on that, but you'll probably be wrong if it's anything but my opinion. But in all seriousness, I honestly couldn't think of anything. But the second part of his question is stacked here. So he said, "Since there are no more wrestling pay-per-views to my knowledge this decade, it is time for some of the best of the decade lists. I will ask best of 2019 stuff on the first show of 2020. What are your top 5 of the decade for each of these categories?" Now, you sent this in at the absolute wrong time, because when I saw this question, I was in the middle of working on an article for today, ranking every paper. I mean, so the timing was good and it was bad, because I was working on an article for the best WWE pay-per-views of 2019, and I was busy working on that until literally 4 a.m., like I said earlier. I had to get it done for this morning. And I saw this question, and I got carried away for like a half an hour putting in all my answers and shit. So I thought I came up with a pretty good crop of answers. Unfortunately, it came at the expense of my article, which I did not get done until 4 a.m. Had I not answered this and had to do other stuff, and my internet went out at one point, I probably would have been done at 3, which isn't that much better, but that's my own fault. So anyway, top 5 WWE pay-per-views of the decade, not including takeovers. So I put the following 6 shows. I know you said 5. I'm going to say 6 because it's my fucking show and I can. First of all, Money in the Bank 2011. I don't think there was a better show this decade that had more of an impact that people still talk about to this day than Money in the Bank 2011. So that's got to be number 1 for me. I know it wasn't an all-around amazing show. Kelly and Brie Bella, God forbid, was fucking terrible. It was what it was. But overall, between the Money in the Bank ladder matches, Christian and Orton, and specifically that Punk Cena main event, it was the pay-per-view of the decade. It kind of has to be. The decade peaked early with Money in the Bank 2011. 2 WrestleManias, WrestleMania 30 and WrestleMania 31. I still say WrestleMania 31 was the better of the 2 shows. All around, I just thought it was a better event. I know WrestleMania 30 had the story of Daniel Bryan and the triple threat and the match with Triple H to kick off the show. And that story was amazingly well told. It ended the night on a great note. We had the Cesaro win in the Battle Royal, the appearances from Hulk Hogan, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin in the opening segment. So it was a pretty amazing show. I just was not a fan of Taker and Brock. And yeah, we had the moment of Brock breaking the streak, but the actual match sucked. And Cena and Wyatt also sucked, and Wyatt should not have lost. WrestleMania 31, it was still one of the best shows of the year, of the decade, rather, and the show of 2014 for WWE. For 2015, we had WrestleMania 31, which, again, I think all around was a better show. Yeah, Sting and Triple H wasn't great, but it was a spectacle for what it was. The main event was amazing. We had Orton and Rollins, which was a great match. Cena and Rusev had a pretty good match. Cena on the United States champion. The women's tag team match was solid. The opening ladder match was fucking awesome. That was a really, really, really good fucking show. Taker and Wyatt was good. I just remember watching that WrestleMania thinking, wow, that was one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. And that was at WrestleMania 35 and WrestleMania 33. But all around, I would not say they were among the best shows of the decade. So those two Manias, Money in the Bank 2011, SummerSlam 2013. Those top 3 matches on that show were unbelievable. You had 3 Match of the Year candidates and Match of the Decades candidates on that one show. You had CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar, one of my favorite matches this entire decade on that show. You had John Cena versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship, with Bryan winning in the debut of The Authority, which the aftermath sucked, but the actual moment of Orton going heel and Triple H going heel was pretty fucking cool. And then also, to a lesser extent, Christian versus Alberto Del Rio for the World Heavyweight Championship, which was a great match too. You also had the in-ring debut of Bray Wyatt, and the match wasn't all that good, but, you know, it happened. Yeah, I can't really, I'm trying to think of what else was on that show, but the top 3 matches were just fucking awesome. It was just a really, really good show. So I gotta go SummerSlam 2013. And then at a tie for, these aren't ranked, by the way, but kind of, sort of, not really, but tied for number 5 here are Extreme Rules 2012, and I loved WrestleMania 28 all around. I don't know if it's one of the best shows of the decade. It was a really, really good WrestleMania, though. Extreme Rules 2012 was a great show. Same thing, a lot like SummerSlam 2013, where the top 3 matches were all amazing. Brock and John Cena in the main event, the Extreme Rules main event. Sheamus and Daniel Bryan in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then CM Punk versus Chris Jericho in that street fight for the WWE Championship. Great show in Chicago. And then Battleground 2016. It was a great pay-per-view to end that era, quote-unquote, of WWE, right before the brand split went into effect the very next day. You had the Shield main event of Dean Ambrose versus Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins for the WWE Championship, and Ambrose winning, which was a cool moment. You had Bayley's main roster debut teaming with Sasha Banks, which was really cool before she showed up on Raw the following month. A nice surprise there. Miz and Darren Young was whatever. Rusev and Zack Ryder was whatever. But overall, it was just a really fucking good show. You also had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, which again was one of my favorite matches of the fucking decade. That was such a great, great match. The booking on the show was great. I think they had New Day in the Wyatt family, which was also a really, really good match. So yeah, overall, just a really, really strong show. So those would be my top 5/6 pay-per-views of the decade for WWE. Money in the Bank 2011, WrestleMania 30, WrestleMania 31, SummerSlam 2013, Extreme Rules 2012, and Battleground 2016. Top 5 takeovers of the decade. So I had New York easily. Is the greatest takeover they ever put on, and yes, I was there for it, so I'm biased, but fuck off, I thought it was a great show. Takeover New York from earlier this year. Takeover New Orleans, which was the greatest takeover before New York this year, which happened over WrestleMania 34 weekend in New Orleans a year and a half ago. Brooklyn, it's hard to say. All the Brooklyn shows were great. Honestly, I might go with Brooklyn 3, because Brooklyn 1 was a really, really special show. It was the first takeover to take place outside of Full Sail University. But overall, like, if you look at the show, they had Bayley and Sasha on that show. Jushin Thunder Liger, had that one-off match with Tyler Breeze. They had the Kevin Owens, Finn Balor ladder match main event. But then you also have, like, the Vaudevillains versus Buddy Murphy. I don't know. It's still a great show today, but it just kind of pales in comparison to the shows they put on now. And the quality of matches is just so much better. So it's a tie between the first Brooklyn show and the third one. The third one was fucking awesome. The main event wasn't great, but every other match on that show was awesome. Roode and McIntyre was meh, but you had the debut of Undisputed Era with Adam Cole crashing the main event afterward, crashing Drew McIntyre's championship celebration. You had Sanity versus Authors of Pain, which was a really, really good match. Andrade versus Johnny Gargano. Ember Moon and Asuka had an awesome match for the NXT Women's Championship. And Aleister Black, I think, versus Hideo Itami was also a really, really good match. So it's a tie between those two, but also I would throw in the top 5 Our Evolution, which, again, some matches on that show aren't amazing. Like, they have the Lucha Dragons versus the fucking Vaudevillains, which wasn't that good. But the moments themselves, like Kevin Owens' debut, Sami Zayn's amazing NXT Championship win, which was such a fucking great match. That they had, again, like I said, Owens' debut and the subsequent heel turn at the end of the evening. You had the debut of the Demon, Finn Balor, in that tag team match with Hideo Itami against the Ascension, and Balor is now the only one remaining in the company after that match, after the Ascension were released just about a week ago, and Hideo Itami left earlier this year as well. So that match, and then there was something else on that show too. The main event, Owens' debut, the Balor debut, and I thought there was something else. Sasha and Charlotte also had a really, really good match. But I think maybe Baron Corbin had like a quick squash or something. But that's still a show that stands the test of time 5 years later as being such a great show. That crowd was amazing. They've always been great at Full Sail, but that one night in particular, they were off the charts. And then finally, TakeOver Dallas from WrestleMania 32 weekend. I thought they did just a terrific job of putting together one of the best TakeOver cards up to that point. Between Nakamura and Sami Zayn in the match of the year candidate, they had Finn Balor and Samoa Joe, amazing match for the NXT Championship. Asuka beating Bayley to become the NXT Women's Champion. American Alpha beating Revival. Austin Aries beating Baron Corbin. Such a great show. So those would be my top 5/top 6 for top 5 takeovers of the decade. Top takeovers of 2000s of the 2010s. Non-WWE wrestling pay-per-views. This is tough because you're like, New Japan, blah, blah, blah. Like, the big... You were referring to, like, big shows. Not, like, smaller shows, but, like, big shows, I guess. So I don't watch much New Japan. I've only seen a couple Wrestle Kingdom shows in full. So I put down here literally any Wrestle Kingdom because I always hear that they're consistently the best show of 2018, 19, 17, 16, 15, whatever. They always have the best pay-per-view of the year in the first 4 days of the fucking year. So I'll put down any Wrestle Kingdom. But to kind of show some variety here, I'll also include other pay-per-views. Slammiversary 2018, I thought last year was a great show. That was really where Impact, not peaked, but they had their best show in many, 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 many years. Was with Slammiversary 2018. Slammiversary from Impact as well, 2012, was also an exceptional show. I think Sting and Rude wasn't a great match, but they had like Kurt Angle and AJ Styles versus The Addiction, Daniels and Kazarian for the World Tag Team titles, Joe and Austin Aries for the X Division title. They had a lot of good matches on that show too, and I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, the return of James Storm and a few others. Such a great show. So those two Impact shows, any Wrestle Kingdom, and then Final Battle 2018. So I was at Final Battle 2017 and 2018. All of the Final Battles in the last 5 years from Ring of Honor were pretty damn good, except for this year's. I thought this year's was it was pretty good. It wasn't as great as the other ones, though. It was easily the weakest installment in at least 5 years. But the 2018 installment from last year was great just because it did mark the end of an era with the Elite leaving Ring of Honor. Cody and Jay Lethal was good, but the main event was outstanding. That Ladder War main event, Jeff Cobb versus Adam Page, was outstanding. Just an overall great fucking show. Like, it was some of the most fun I've ever had at a wrestling show. And I also brought Alexis and her brother, and Alexis had been to some wrestling shows prior to that point, not many. Her brother had not, aside from one episode of Raw many years ago. Neither of them had been to Ring of Honor. And they had really no idea who the Elite were and people like that. They came out of that show raving about it and praising it for days. And we went to G1 Supercard earlier this year too, which was a really good show, but not as good as Final Battle. It was just it was something else to see. So to see other people go to Ring of Honor and just thoroughly enjoy it and have a blast, and you know, I've brought a lot of different people to the Ring of Honor shows over the years, and every single person I brought to a Ring of Honor show, they always said that was a great show, despite not really knowing much about the product. And that was the case this year with last year with Final Battle 2018 in New York City. And then I also honestly put on here Double or Nothing. I was there for that show. It was a really good show. It wasn't my favorite show I've ever been to. Not even the best show I was at this year. But it marked the beginning of AEW. Either that or All In. I would say Double or Nothing was the better show. But it was a really, really good show. I would probably put that in one of the best pay-per-views, not ever, but of the decade, yeah, because it marked the beginning of AEW. You had the Lucha Bros versus the Young Bucks. You had Jericho versus Omega. You had Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes. You had the debut of Jon Moxley after the main event was over. A really, really good show. WWE Big Four pay-per-view matches, top 5. So here was my list here, in no particular order. You can't forget about Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker from WrestleMania 26, just because, yes, that did happen this decade. The decade peaked early with that match. It was the best pay-per-view match of the decade for WWE. It happened in April of 2010, but it was still this decade. So Taker and HBK2 from WrestleMania 26 from 2010. Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk, mentioned that earlier, from SummerSlam 2013. Also mentioned this earlier, but Daniel Bryan versus John Cena from SummerSlam 2013. So 2 Big 4 pay-per-view matches from WWE of the decade on the same show. That's how good that show was. Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk versus... No, I put Punk down here for some reason. Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins versus John Cena from the Royal Rumble 2015. I think people forget how good that match was. Because people like to, think about how Roman won, look back on how Roman won, and people shat all over it, and the show wasn't all that good. But that match salvaged that show from being a complete disaster. That match was so fucking good. Aside from Bayley and Banks that year, that was the match of the year for WWE, at least for the main roster. And then finally, I'll throw this in here, another match. The only match of these 5 that I was in attendance for, but it was so good I can't not include it. John Cena versus AJ Styles from SummerSlam 2016. Not just because the match was amazing, but also what it did for AJ's career. Had AJ lost there, I honestly don't think he would have gone on to become the success story that he did. Reigning as WWE champion twice, one of those reigns lasting over a year, becoming a multi-time United States champion and everything else that he did in the last 3 years, serving as the face of SmackDown Live for so long. So, yeah, definitely AJ and Cena from, I would say, SummerSlam 2016. The Rumble match was great. The Money in the Bank match was great. But the SummerSlam match really put AJ over the top as a bona fide main eventer because of that clean win that he had over John Cena that evening. WWE non-Big 4 matches, so like other pay-per-views. Punk and Cena, obviously. It's not a Big 4 pay-per-view. Money in the Bank might be considered a Big 5 pay-per-view, but technically it's not. So Punk and Cena from Money in the Bank 2011. 2 Shield matches here. The Shield versus Ryback and Team Hell No from TLC 2012. The Shield's debut match was absolutely amazing and really, again, put them on the map. Had they lost there, then I don't think that group and even anyone involved in the group, maybe if they broke up soon after, I don't know if the group would have gone on to reach the heights that they did had they lost to Ryback and Team Hell No in their debut match on that show. Great match and great show, too. TLC 2012 was one of those, again, really, really good shows from WWE that deserves an honorable mention. Another Shield match, the Shield versus the Wyatt family from Elimination Chamber 2014. Still one of the best matches of the decade. Those 2 teams went in there and just fucking killed it. The crowd was buzzing before they even touched that night. The build was great. The whole thing about it, the entire match was just something special. Mentioned this earlier, but Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn from Battleground 2016. Nothing on the line, just a feud that had been going on for almost 2 years by that point, and they went in there and fucking killed it as they could. And the takeover matches were good, but the issue with their matches was that early on, they weren't really allowed to go all out and have the match they were capable of. They did on that show. They did at Battleground 2016, and it was one of the best matches I've ever seen. And then, to close it out here, CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan from Over the Limit 2012. The finish was a little fluky, but that's because it set up a rematch for the Money in the Bank pay-per-view 2 months later between Bryan and Punk over the WWE Championship. But the Over the Limit match, the build was completely non-existent, but they went in there and stole the show. Great fucking match. Non-WWE pay-per-view, major pay-per-view matches, so like Wrestle Kingdom, he says, Dominion, Final Battle, Slammiversary, Bound for Glory, All Out, blah, blah, blah. Actually, earlier, to correct myself, when you said the non-WWE wrestling pay-per-views, you weren't talking about any major ones, but the ones that came to mind were major pay-per-views. This was the one where you had said that the non-WWE major pay-per-view matches had to be on a Wrestle Kingdom, Dominion, Final Battle, Slammiversary, Bound for Glory, All Out, etc. So in my top, you can include really... It's hard to say because I don't really watch much New Japan, and I could include all this list with New Japan matches, but I'll try to switch it up a little bit. 3 of the matches come from New Japan. The first 2 are Omega and Okada 1, which I did watch and loved. It was a great match. I think Okada won that one. Omega wouldn't win until the 4th match, which is also on this list, from June of 2018. I think it was at Dominion, so it counts. You can include Omega Okada 2 and 3 on here, but again, I don't want to make the whole list be Okada Omega matches. So I'm switching it up. So the first one, the second one, because I watched those matches and I thought they were as great as people said they were. Maybe not 7 stars, but they were great matches. AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura from, not WrestleMania, the WWE matches never really lived up to the greatness of this one, but from, shit, my bad, something fell over next to me. The Wrestle Kingdom match for the Intercontinental Championship, the IWGP Intercontinental title from Wrestle Kingdom, I want to say 10 in 2016. Jesus, shit continues to fall over next to me. I apologize. From January of 2016, right before AJ went off to WWE, Nakamura left soon after. So that was a great, somewhat final farewell for those two, New Japan, and they went off with a bang, great match. And then one from Impact, one from Ring of Honor. I would include Bobby Roode and James Storm from the 2012 Impact Bound for Glory pay-per-view. Such a great match. The feud was great. Both guys regard that as one of the best matches of their career, and rightfully so. It was just so fucking good. And I love Beer Money. I love the feud, and the match was just as good as the build was. Really, really good stuff if you've never seen it. And then finally, Ladder War. I mentioned this earlier, but I was going to say the first one I was in attendance for, the Young Bucks versus The Addiction versus Motor City Machine Guns. But that was All-Star Extravaganza 2016, not a major pay-per-view. So I would put in the Ladder War match from last year's Final Battle pay-per-view, which was the Briscoes, SCU, and the Young Bucks, where the Briscoes emerged victorious to win the World Tag Team titles as a swan song for SCU and the Young Bucks from Ring of Honor. So, well, yeah, great shit. This was a really, that was a really, really good show, a great match, and as were the other ones I just mentioned. And then finally from Brandon, I know we're spending a lot of time on this one question, but it was a really good question, and I wanted to put a lot of effort into answering it. His final component of the question here was non-WWE minor pay-per-view matches. So what you would interpret as lesser Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan, AEW, etc. pay-per-views. Honestly, dude, I have no idea. I mean, Ring of Honor and Impact I watch all the time, but no matches really stood out to me for the most part. Definitely none from New Japan, because I don't really watch many New Japan matches / pay-per-views that aren't Wrestle Kingdom and maybe sometimes Dominion. That's about it. So I can't really say any for New Japan. And this is all subjective, too, because I could say, oh, the best matches. Some of these aren't really, I mean, they're all debatable, but some of these, are the best matches. For this one, this is purely subjective, because I'm not looking at star ratings and shit like that. I can't really think of, the best matches of the decade that didn't happen on a major pay-per-view for lesser companies. That's being really specific, but I put on here two matches. The Bucks versus the Hardys from the Supercard of Honor, Ring of Honor show in 2017. It was the night before the Hardy Boys returned to WWE in another ladder match. That was a great fucking match, and it really put the Bucks over huge, and I think it got the largest crowd in Ring of Honor history up to that point, which was really cool. So yeah, they had a great match. And then also Bobby Roode versus Austin Aries from the 2012 X Division show, the Ultimate X show, or what was it called? Destination X, for the World Championship, and Aries winning was such a great moment. Also from 2012. I thought that was Impact's best year of the decade. Consistently, they had the best year in 2012. And then they've had a couple good years since then in recent years, but 2012 all around was just fucking great, in the ring anyway. And they had the most star power I've ever seen on any Impact roster ever. But yeah, great shit there. So finally, moving on to the next question here from Elena the Y from YouTube. I was about to say that I've never seen a pay-per-view start off so strong and fail so miserably as it went along than TLC on Sunday. Then I remember these are WWE pay-per-views, and I probably just blocked out most of these memories. What other pay-per-views this decade have had the same trajectory as TLC 2019? So this was a very timely question, because like I just said, you sent this in while I was working on my article of best and worst WWE pay-per-views of 2019, ranking them from worst to best. And one pay-per-view that came to mind while watching it that really fit your criteria here was Stomping Grounds. I thought Stomping Grounds could have very well been the show of the year had they not had the second half of the show not just fallen flat completely. Because that show kicked off with a couple of great matches. Becky and Lacey wasn't amazing, but you had that great Triple Threat Cruiserweight Championship match in the kickoff show. You had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus The New Day, Ricochet and Samoa Joe for the United States Championship. Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan versus Heavy Machinery. All great matches. And then you had Roman and Drew, which was just a pooper of a match. No one gave a shit. You had Kofi and Dolph Ziggler. Steel cage match for the WWE Championship. No one cared. And then finally, Baron Corbin versus Seth Rollins for the Universal Championship with Lacey Evans as the special guest referee. Yeah, that match was a pooper too. So, yeah, that was a real stinker of a second half of a pay-per-view. So I would say that one. Other than that, I mean, I would really have to go back and think of other shows from the decade that fit that description, because a lot of those pay-per-views, like you said, just completely, they just don't, a lot of those shows start off really, really well, and then the final half will just be fucking terrible. Survivor Series 2013 started off well enough, albeit with one match, but the Elimination Tag Team match with Roman Reigns reigning supreme, I thought was a great match at Survivor Series 2013. The rest of that show was fucking abysmal. You had Cena and Del Rio again for the World Heavyweight Championship. Big Show and Randy Orton in the main event. Oh my God. It was fucking awful. For the title and the main event, that was terrible. Fucking Mark Henry versus Ryback. The show sucked. And Bryan and Punk versus the Wyatt family was good. There were a few other decent matches, but overall, that show was just bad. It started off well enough and then just fell off a fucking cliff. I'm sure there's other ones I'm not thinking of, but I'm sure there's a lot more that, like you said, I just have blocked from my memory just because they were so bad. From FD from Facebook, he's got 3 questions here. First one being, with the recent injury suffered by Kairi Sane and how she had to face tremendous pain in carrying on in her tag team title match, at WWE TLC, do you feel that the WWE needs to bump up on how they are able to control the wrestlers' maneuvers starting from the Performance Center in order to prevent such injuries like that from happening again? I don't know if it's a Performance Center issue or what the problem there was, but I have no fucking clue. Like, this didn't really occur to me while watching the match. I didn't really notice anything. I mean, the match wasn't that good, and I'm sure this was a factor. The match just wasn't good anyway, so it wasn't solely based on the fact that Kairi was hurt. It just was not a good match. And it definitely could have been better. That being said, though, how did no one know that Kairi Sane was concussed except for Becky Lynch? The referees, the people in the back, not even Charlotte, bothered to fucking check up on her, but Becky did. What the fuck happened there? That's a fucking disgrace. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what I think they should do, and New Japan did this recently, where I think Kenta continued the match despite being concussed, which was absolutely ridiculous. They need to do a better job of checking up on their wrestlers, and as by all accounts, they do a pretty good job of that as it is. But in this one match, on this one pay-per-view, in this one main event, they just did a terrible job of it. And Kairi Sane continued on concussed, trying to run away from the fucking chairs. And this is a bad match to get concussed in, because you're having tables and chairs and ladders thrown at you every fucking 10 seconds. So it's not really a Performance Center issue. It's more of like a people in the back pay the fuck attention type of issue. And the referees have to do a better job of checking up on these people after big spots like that, or making sure they're okay. I know there were 4 women in the match, and you can't really check up on everyone simultaneously, but they really should have done a better job of correcting and rectifying that problem before it got to where it did, with Kairi Sane continuing on despite being concussed. That's just completely unacceptable. His second question, in your personal view, do you see Los Ingobernables de Japón leaving the Tokyo Dome upcoming Wrestle Kingdom weekend holding all the gold in New Japan Pro Wrestling, considering the fact that all the members of the faction are involved in their title matches? And do you see this outcome to be more or as impactful as when the Undisputed Era held all the gold in NXT they still currently hold to this day? I don't follow New Japan. I really have no idea. I'm the wrong person to ask here. Will they put all the championships on them? I guess it's possible. Okada's been the champion since, I think the G1 Supercard show, actually, when I was there and saw the title change hands. And it was a great match with Jay White. But, I could see that happening. Again, I don't really follow the product, so I'm not the best person to ask this type of question to. But, it's definitely possible. Will it be as impactful as Undisputed Era? Yeah, I mean, I think there's more members of Los Ingobernables de Japón, and they would be winning more championships, I believe. It would be as impactful, if not more impactful. I don't hear as many people talking about this as probably they should be. And that's not a thing where, I don't watch the product. That's a thing where other people I follow on my timeline on Twitter follow New Japan. They watch New Japan. They talk about it all the time. I've heard no one talk about the fact that that group could leave that weekend with all the gold. I have heard that from absolutely nobody. So clearly it's not that big of a story. So I'm not sure if it would be as impactful as Undisputed Era, but it would still be a good, nod or a good feather in their cap to have won all the championships in that promotion. They've been around for a long time now. And they're a pretty good stable from what I've seen, but still. And I think they also have a mini faction, like a mini subsection of Los Ingobernables now in Ring of Honor with Rush, Dragon Lee, and fucking Kenny King, which makes no sense. They're not holding gold. Dragon Lee is. He's the current Ring of Honor World Television Champion. Rush has a rematch for the Ring of Honor World Championship next month, and then Kenny King has no title. But anyway, though, will it be as impactful? Probably not. The Undisputed Era thing was a long time coming, and it was a big, big story. Unless I'm missing something here, the Los Ingobernables thing really isn't. I have heard nobody talk about that whatsoever, even though I don't really follow the product. So again, I'm probably not the best judge of character when it comes to that type of thing. His third question here, with Rhea Ripley potentially being the one who will end the dominant reign of Shayna Baszler as the NXT Women's Champion come this week's final live NXT of 2019, what are your thoughts on Baszler's reign overall, and how would you compare it with that of her first reign previously? Obviously a much better reign. Her first reign was cut short way too quickly, and yeah, I gave Kairi Sane her moment, but honestly, imagine how much bigger Shayna's reign would have... I mean, it's still big now because it's been going on for fucking 14 months, but imagine how much bigger it would have been had she never lost the championship to Kairi. Had she held it from WrestleMania weekend last year, a lot like Asuka, and by this point, she would have shattered Asuka's record for the longest consecutive reign as NXT Women's Champion easily. But that first reign was good. The match with Ember Moon at WrestleMania weekend in New Orleans was good. The Nikki Cross match honestly kind of bored me. I was there for that one in Chicago. And then I was there when she dropped the title to Kairi. And it was a really good match. So she didn't really have the time to really kind of find her footing as the NXT Women's Champion before she dropped the belt the first time. The second reign has been great. And not every match has been a barn burner, but overall, almost every match she's had has had a big fight feel. People think she's going to lose the championship, including myself included. And she never does. She probably will tonight. That's my prediction. I do see Rhea Ripley walking out the new NXT Women's Champion. But the quality of matches overall that she's had is up there with anyone else's. Maybe not Asuka. I mean, Asuka had a couple matches too, but she had a lot of great ones. So is Shayna, though. Shayna's had a lot of good matches. The matches with Ember were good. Kairi Sane were good. The Bianca Belair match was really good. The four-way over Mania weekend was great in New York. The Io Shirai match in Bridgeport at TakeOver 25 was very good. The Mia Yim match was probably the weakest of the bunch, but still a good match. The Candice LeRae match on that episode of NXT in early October was fucking awesome. So yeah, she's had a great reign. I would say if she's not the best NXT Women's Champion of all time, she's right behind Asuka, who had a lot of great matches too with Bayley and Mickie James and Ember Moon and a few others, and Nikki Cross as well. So yeah, her reign has been great, but I do also see it ending tonight at the hands of Rhea Ripley on NXT. At noob_n_co 1991, which WWE superstars had a disappointing 2019, and will they improve in 2020? So I just plucked my list from the polls from the 2019 WWE/NXT Year in Review Awards on the website. Check it out right now. Cheap plug, nextairwrestling.net. Vote today. So on that list, I included EC3, who easily had the most disappointing 2019 because he got called up at the onset of 2019 and proceeded to do absolutely fucking nothing. I think the only televised match he's won on WWE TV this year was when he beat Dean Ambrose in his debut match, and that was it. It was all downhill from there because the crowd did not react to him the way that Vince hoped they would. And even before that, though, they were doing jack shit with the guy. So EC3 easily had the most disappointing 2019, in my opinion. Also up there would be Bobby Lashley, who started off the year promisingly enough as the Intercontinental Champion, running high with Lio Rush, dropped the championship. He was a two-time IC champion, I think, and had, the reigns were fine. They were nothing special. But after he lost that title, it was all downhill from there. They did nothing with Bobby Lashley. The Braun Strowman feud was largely a waste of time. It really benefited nobody. They had a good match at Extreme Rules, but beyond that, waste of time. And the feud with Rusev over the last 3 months has been a fucking nightmare because Bobby got hurt after the Strowman feud, so his 2019 was kind of a waste. Kind of a wash. The Miz, same thing. He started off really, really hot in that feud with Shane. I honestly was looking forward more to that match than almost any other WrestleMania. They did a great job of building it up. Not the most anticipated match on the card, but close to it because the story was great. Miz was getting over as a babyface, and then they had him lose, and they had him lose, and they had him lose, and it was a complete waste of time, and he never really recovered. They had Miz do nothing for the rest of 2019 after that Shane feud ended. The only thing I can remember The Miz doing in the last 6 months was that mini feud that he had with Shinsuke Nakamura over the Intercontinental Championship. And even that lasted like 3 or 4 weeks, and he lost in the end. And he's had a feud with Bray Wyatt going on recently. The feud's been good. The TLC match at the TLC pay-per-view, not a TLC match, was kind of boring. So he's had just a complete waste of a year as well. Braun Strowman, I mean, every year has been disappointing for him. I mean, he really broke out in 2017. 2018 was a wash. You know, he won a couple things last year, and this year he won a couple things too, like the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal for whatever the fuck that's worth, and the Raw Tag Team titles for like a month with Seth Rollins. But he failed again to win the Universal Championship. Wasn't on the main card at the WrestleMania show. Didn't make the main card. I don't think he was at SummerSlam, was he? No, he wasn't at SummerSlam. Failed to win the Universal Championship from Seth Rollins. Got moved to SmackDown. Had a terrible match with Tyson Fury. At a certain point, you just stop believing in the guy. He's just a new Bray Wyatt where he cannot win whenever it matters most. That's Braun Strowman. Cesaro, to a certain extent, he started off the year as a SmackDown Tag Team Champion, lost it with Sheamus, got drafted to Raw, did nothing, was really a stepping stone more than anything for people over there, and is still a stepping stone for people on SmackDown now. And Elias, too. I mean, the guy had a really solid 2018. It peaked with the Seth Rollins match and Money in the Bank for the Intercontinental Championship. They worked really well together. But he has done nothing since then. He turned face. They quickly went back on that. He turned face again like a month ago, which was random. But before that, though, he was hurt for a few months. He did nothing throughout the summer. He had that waste of a feud with Roman Reigns. Just Elias, for a guy that I thought could have been a viable, Intercontinental Champion at one point, is just a complete nobody on the roster now. I could not give two shits about Elias, and it's sad to say. At Iwagu91, a couple questions here. First one being, with Samoa Joe returning to the ring from his thumb injury, do you think that they'll add yet another third person for the Raw commentary team, or go with just Vic Joseph and Jerry Lawler like they're doing with Michael Cole and Corey Graves on SmackDown? I mean, I hope so. I'm not getting my hopes up because they're adamant about having a third member of that commentary team. When D.L. Madden got bumped from the booth, if they were going to do a two-man booth, that would have been the time to do it. There was no real reason to have Joe join the booth, although he's done a great job at it, and they want to have him maintain a presence on the show. There was no real reason for him to join the commentary team. So that would have been the time to do a two-man booth. If they didn't do it then, I don't think they'll do it when Joe gets back in the ring. They'll probably add somebody else like a Byron Saxton, or maybe not a Tom Phillips, but probably Byron, because he's a man without a show right now. He's currently doing, I think, commentary for maybe 205 Live and definitely Main Event. I'm not sure what else he's on, but he took a definite downgrade. He definitely took a demotion after the commentary changes were made a couple months ago, but probably Byron. But yeah, I see them going back to a three-person booth, sticking with the three-person booth. They shouldn't. I think a two-man booth is better. Jerry Lawler is sometimes insufferable, so they have to get rid of him just in general. I think a Vic Joseph, Byron Saxton combo would be pretty decent. I'm not a big Byron fan, but he's much better than Jerry Lawler in 2019. Your thoughts on Daniel Bryan having a look similar to the 2011-2012 look, and while not clean-shaven, actually doing away with the scruffy beard that he had been known for. Yeah, I like the new look. He looks like he has not aged a day since the last time he had a shaved head and kind of a bit of a smaller beard back in 2011-2012. He only had that look for a short time because he grew the beard back out in early 2012. He did have the shaved head for quite a while, though, after like in mid-2011 through, I want to say, mid-2012 for about a year there. But it was only very briefly that the beard was, either non-existent or very short. That lasted a very short period of time. But I think the new change helped. I mean, we've had the long hair Daniel Bryan since he came back in the ring. He had shorter hair. I mean, this is not the first time he's had a makeover. He had shorter hair when he became a GM and he retired 3.5 years ago, in February, almost 4 years ago now, in February of 2016. But I think his beard, it might have been the same length that it is now, and the hair was definitely longer. Now it's just a complete buzz cut. So I like the new look. Hopefully with it comes changes for the character of Daniel Bryan to kind of distinguish himself from the evil Daniel Bryan from earlier this year, late last year. So I like the new look. Do you see Johnny Gargano returning to cost Finn Balor his match against Adam Cole, baby, for the NXT title tonight? I didn't even think about that. I don't think so. I'm not really sure how close Gargano is to coming back. Granted, he doesn't have to be clear to compete to return tonight to cost Balor the title, but why would you do that if you don't know when he's going to be back? Like, if they did that and built towards a match at the next TakeOver in February, I would get it, but they don't even know if you'll be good by then, because from what I understand, it's a neck issue. And that shit could either be a couple weeks, a couple months, or up to a year. So I don't even, knowing NXT and how they book things, I don't think they'll do that. Adam Cole winning either clean or interference from Ciampa, Keith Lee, Undisputed Era, whatever the case might be. I don't see Balor winning, but I also don't see Gargano getting involved just because I don't think they're ready to bring him back yet. I feel like if he was going to be on his way back, we would have heard by now that he was in the Performance Center, he's getting better. I have heard nothing about Johnny Gargano, which is not good news, meaning that he is well a ways off from returning to the ring, which is a shame. At RJ_Marceau, Mr. Marceau's question was, do you think AEW rushed into the MJF versus Cody storyline? I feel like they could have drawn it out and made it an even bigger deal. Also, what is the significance of the ring that MJF won in the Battle Royal? Honestly, I have no idea. The whole brass ring shit, I mean, it's a good gimmick for him for people to like kiss the ring, that type of thing. I feel like we had this before. Who was doing the whole kiss the ring thing? I've definitely seen this somewhere else before. Bow down and kiss. Who was doing? I feel like I saw it in Ring of Honor. I feel like maybe Bully Ray. I feel like Bully Ray was maybe doing it after he went into the Hall of Fame last year. He was doing that in Ring of Honor. I've definitely seen this somewhere else before in some other major company in the last couple of years. Let me know if you know what I'm talking about. But the whole kiss the ring thing was definitely a gimmick that someone was doing for a while. I don't know if it was a Hall of Fame ring or why they had the ring. I feel like it was Ring of Honor, but I could be mistaken. Anyway, the MJF Cody thing, are they rushing it? A little bit, but I mean, they're definitely not facing off until the February pay-per-view. So I thought they might face off in an episode of Dynamite, which got me worried because that would be stupid. But they're dragging it out. They're having Cody cut a promo one week and then MJF the next and then Cody the next week after that. So they're doing a good job with it. I didn't really have much of an issue with how they've progressed it so far since Full Gear. It's not like they had a match in the subsequent episode of Dynamite, you know. I do assume that they hold off on the match until the Revolution pay-per-view in late February. If they do it anytime before then, it would be a complete waste, and that would be stupid. But as of right now, I don't think they will, nor should they. And yeah, is it being rushed? No, I wouldn't say that. As long as they don't do it before the pay-per-view, I'm content. At Reborn Again from the Twitter machine, John Ritland from YouTube as well. Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check it out here on YouTube. He was on Wrestle Rant Radio last week with me to break down, or rather preview, the Into the Fire pay-per-view and just shoot the shit on all things wrestling. So if you haven't already, check out our candid conversation from Wrestle Rant Radio last week. But his first question was, did you watch AEW Dark? And if so, was the commentary by Vicky Guerrero and Joey Janela totally horrendous, or was that just me? No, you're not alone. You're not alone, dude. I thought it was bad too. Joey Janela, I didn't really mind as much. It was kind of pointless, but Vicky's commentary, at least during the first match, was so fucking distracting. It was cool to see her. The excuse me thing, I got a pop out of me. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then she gets on commentary, and she proceeds to act horny for the entire fucking match for Private Party. What the fuck was that all about? I mean, maybe one or two lines like, oh, like they're attractive, like I'm into them, whatever. She spent the entire match fawning over Private Party. It was so distracting, and it was a good match, but it was hard to pay attention with Vicky Guerrero's terrible commentary. So hopefully they don't bring her back. Like, I like the guest commentary thing more often than not. I mentioned that here on the show before. I like the guest commentary gimmick they have for AEW Dark. It's nice. It keeps things fresh. Keeps things fresh. They bring in familiar voices and familiar faces, stuff like that, which I think is cool. But Vicky was just a complete miss. That was not good. And Janela was not much better. His next question. So AEW has one of their women playing an alien. Why exactly? I can't answer that. Now, I like Trish Statlander a lot. I think she's a really, really good talent. She's a great wrestler to build around in that women's division, because God knows that women's division needs help and more creative direction and focus and whatnot. She is really good, and I'm glad she's facing Britt Baker tonight in a number one contenders match, the AEW Women's Championship, which is cool. The issue is that we've heard nothing as to who she is and why she portrays an alien. I have no idea. She was doing that when I saw her in person at I think it was Big Time Wrestling Show in August. She had a great match with some other woman whose name escapes me, but I put the clips up here on the channel where she put her opponent through a door. She got put through a door. I don't remember, but if you go back far enough in my live reactions playlist here on the channel from August, you'll see it, Chris Statlander. And she's really, really impressive. I'm glad she's getting the push that she is, but we have no explanation so far as to why she's an alien. Why? Like, we got a really good video package last week on Big Swole on AEW Dark, which I thought was great. Why can't they do that for Chris Statlander? Like, that would help a lot in getting me to care about her and getting, giving most viewers. I mean, I already care about her because I know who she is and how good she is, but most people don't. Most people don't know who she is, and they're not really aware of how good she is. So, because of that, why not just run a video package on her where you explain who she is and why she portrays an alien? Why does she walk out there with the fucking alien makeup? I have no idea. They should have done that before putting her in the spot that they have, where she's like next in line for a shot at the championship. That's great, but from a character standpoint, why the fuck should I care? His next question, what are 3 things that both WWE and AEW need to do to improve their respective TV products in 2020 and beyond? I mean, I wrote down more than 3 for both products. Some apply to both, some apply to just one. For AEW, stop mentioning WWE. Fucking stop with that shit. Oh my God, it's so annoying. More so the Bucks do it, and really Cody more than anyone, but it's so fucking annoying. Stop mentioning NXT and people from NXT. NXT doesn't do that shit. Stop. It's annoying. Focus on the women's divisions for both companies, because AEW needs help with their women's division, and then WWE just stopped caring about it largely after WrestleMania, after Ronda Rousey left. And yeah, the women have main evented the last 2 pay-per-views, which is cool. But the matches weren't good. The stories really aren't that good. Becky's great, and Bayley's getting better, and Sasha and Charlotte are all relevant. They're doing well. But the tag team titles are getting better with Asuka and Kairi, but then there's everyone else. They have so many women under contract they're doing nothing with right now. Nikki Cross doesn't really mean anything. Carmella, they're not doing jack shit with, nor really should they. She's not that good. Dana Brooke sucks. Ember Moon is out right now. Ruby Riot's out right now. Nia Jax, when she comes back, God help us all. I'm not a big fan of her at all. Yeah, their women's division needs more focus too. It's not just an AEW isolated issue. That goes for WWE as well. Character development, just got done talking about this. More video packages give me a reason to care about certain people, both in AEW specifically and WWE. Give me a reason to care about your competitors, please. Otherwise, I can't care about the matches if I don't care about the people involved in them. Less pay-per-views for WWE, please. AEW has done a great job of setting up a quarterly schedule of 4 pay-per-views a year, one in February, May, August, and November, every 3 months. I love that. The OCD in me fucking loves that. WWE, they had 14 pay-per-views this year, including 2 Saudi shows. That is way too many. They're probably not going to cut back on that. I don't think they're doing Fastlane as far as I know, which is good, but they got to cut at least like 5 shows. At least 5 shows. They won't, but whatever. Less content, because they put out way too much content. It's way too much for anyone to watch and enjoy. It's just way too much. It's great stuff for the network, but like 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of this, 1 hour of this, 1 hour, it's just way too much. Stay true to the brand split for WWE. They've done a decent job of it so far since the draft 2 months ago, but if they start watering it down again around WrestleMania time, I just give up. For AEW, less dark stables, the whole Nightmare Collective and the Dark Order, who are growing on me, admittedly. And then the Butcher, the Bunny, the Blade, that shit is terrible. So less of the dark stables that I just don't give a shit about. And please, above all else, just make things make sense. That's all I ask. 4 words. Make things make sense. Please. AEW, that's not really an issue with, but the win-loss record stuff is just not clicking with me. People have terrible records that are number 1 contenders. The Bucks are like 9-5 or something. The Lucha Bros are like 6-6 or some shit. Like, some of these teams have terrible records. Like, what the fuck? Like, it makes no... Like, some of this stuff doesn't make the slightest bit of sense with the wins and losses. WWE, even less shit makes sense in WWE. They do stuff, they completely forget about it, or they'll have people lose for months and months and months and expect us to care about them, like Braun Strowman, people like that. Please, just make things make sense. At Time Bomb Zone from Twitter, their first question was, thoughts on the NWA Television Championship Tournament? I like it. It's a cool way of crowning the all-new NWA Television Champion. I thought they set up the bracket, the field very well this week on Power. We know next week the first-round matches will consist of, I want to say, Eddie Kingston versus Ricky Starks. And then I think Colt Cabana versus The Question Mark. So 2 good matches, and I'm looking forward to seeing it culminate at the next NWA pay-per-view in January. Thoughts on Nick Aldis' this new faction? I love it. This is what they've been building towards building towards since the first episode of Power. they've been teasing tension with all this and Camille, which was it was a ruse all along. They were in cahoots the entire time. And they have the wild cards in there, and it makes sense. Nick Aldis is the dealer. The wild cards are the wild cards. It makes perfect sense. You just need the Joker in there, and you got a full faction there of card-like stables, a card-themed stable. But nonetheless, though, I'm a big fan of the new faction. I like Aldis as a heel, that he has his own faction. He's got Camille with him. Really, really good stuff. Who do you see beating Nick Aldis for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship? Two names come to mind. Maybe Tim Storm, after what we saw on Wednesday, or rather on Tuesday night on Power. The only issue with that is that Tim Storm already lost a match where he can now no longer challenge for the championship. Now, they could throw that all away by having him go for the title anyway and win it, but that would be stupid. And Tim Storm is 50-something years old, and he's already held the championship before, too. He held the championship. Nick Aldis actually beat him for that belt 2 years ago. So, probably not Tim Storm. In my opinion, I was just thinking about this last night while watching NWA Power. Eli Drake. The guy's a star. He came across like a total star at Into the Fire, and again on Power this week. 2 wins over Ken Anderson. They've been teasing something with him and Aldis for a while now, so that could be the long game. That could be what they ultimately build to. Eli Drake beating Aldis for that NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. That's what I would do. At Scarlet1 from Twitter, their final questions here, 3 questions. Best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars, and number 11. I thought Dynamite overall was the better show last week with Omega and Paige versus Kip Sabian and Shawn Spears. Pretty good match. They also had, what was the main event? Was the Young Bucks versus Santana and Ortiz? Great main event, street fight main event. NXT, those 2 awesome matches. It was Lio Rush losing the Cruiserweight Championship to Angel Garza. Great match. And then the main event, Finn Balor, Keith Lee, and Tommaso Ciampa, number 1 contenders match. Also really, really, really good. Worst of each show with AEW. Let me see. I had the lineups right here in front of me. From AEW, there really wasn't anything too bad. Big Swole, Emi Sakura was... I honestly don't give a shit about Emi Sakura, and Big Swole doesn't do a ton for me. She's good. I just don't really care about her. The Butcher and the Blade beating QT Marshall and Cody. Good match, but I don't care about the Butcher and Blade. And then with NXT, the Breezango match versus the Singh Bros. God, that was a fucking waste. Who gives a shit? Bianca Belair versus Kaden Carter felt like filler. Travis Banks versus Jackson Riker. I mean, it was fine, but I just don't care about... I just don't give a shit about Forgotten Sons. That was clearly a filler show before tonight's big show. Same thing with AEW. Their next question here, best and worst of TLC. The best, the first 2 or 3 matches, including the kickoff. Andrade Carrillo was great. The tag team ladder match was awesome as expected. And then Black and Buddy Murphy stole the show. Everything that followed from the OC versus the Viking Raiders, which bored me out of my mind. Miz and Wyatt was boring. The main event was boring. Roman Reigns and Corbin was fucking boring. And then the tables match with Lashley and Rusev was boring as all shit. So the best, the first 2 or 3 matches. The worst, everything else. Their third question here, what do you know about Kairi Sane's concussion, and what do you think about how everyone was able to handle it? The one agreement I've seen in every argument is that Becky Lynch did everything she could to protect Kairi's health. I agree. I've seen the same thing. The fact that how it was handled, the way it was handled, was completely inexcusable. How they did not know that she was hurt until Becky Lynch went over to her makes no sense to me. The referee are spewing off all this nonsensical bullshit to them about whatever else, time cues, whatever. But he doesn't check up on them when they need them the most. Do a better job of checking up on your fucking superstars. That's inexcusable. I'm not them, so maybe they've done it. I'm sure they've done it a million times before, but there's no reason for that to happen to a female in the main event of a WWE pay-per-view. Like, it's even worse for Kairi because the woman's fucking small as shit. It's not like it was, some monster like Braun Strowman, which still would not be good, but it's this, poor innocent woman getting concussed and still getting chairs thrown at her by Charlotte Flair. Do your fucking homework and do your job. Jesus Christ. That shit should just not have happened. And final question of the episode comes from @E13A from Twitter. With 2019 coming to a close, how do you feel about the state of WWE since we were made the authority 1 year ago yesterday? It's the exact same thing. The product, I honestly can't say, the product was better this year than last year. Was it really, though? I can't sit here and tell you that Raw or SmackDown were infinitely better than it was a year ago. Because the product was bad at the end of 2018, even after that whole fucking announcement about, you're the authority now, which was complete bullshit. The product still sucked up until, the summer Honestly, for the first half of 2019, the shows were terrible. SmackDown was completely forgettable. Raw was not much better. NXT was the saving grace of this fucking promotion, but that's not the main roster. It was a complete waste of time. It got better in the summer, and then after the draft went into effect, Raw and SmackDown went back to being shit. Especially SmackDown, especially after the move to Fox. The show's been completely unbearable recently. Just completely lifeless shows. Totally lifeless shows. So ever since we were made the authority, what has changed? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing changed. Nothing at all, really. They had their highlights this year. They had their low points, but I can't say it was any that much better or that much worse than it was last year, to be honest with you. If anything, it was slightly better. But us being made the authority changed absolutely nothing. Because Vince was still all over the show earlier this year in the Kofi storyline. Shane was still all over the show as an authority figure. So ever since they bowed out and made us the authority, they were still the authority somehow. How the fuck does that happen? Stephanie and Triple H were on the show during the Becky storyline earlier this year. So as expected, nothing changed. And that does it, guys, for today's episode of #AskGSM, episode 316, baby. Happy birthday once again to Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Texas Rattlesnake. And thank you guys, as always, for sending your questions to the show. We have one episode left in 2019, so start sending in those questions now before I record them on Monday, December 23rd is when I will probably be recording next week's Wrestle Rant Radio. So get on it right now by sending in your questions to Twitter at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Put in your question on the post that I put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. For this week, it would be on Sunday night, not Tuesday, just a heads up. And then on YouTube as well, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So with all that being said, guys, 1 week away from Christmas. Cannot fucking wait. Star Wars Friday, probably SmackDown. I'm going to a Christmas party on Saturday. Hopefully Mr. Marceau's engagement party on Sunday. A loaded weekend coming up, and I could not be any more pumped. That being said, guys, I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Give me an old hell yeah, swig of soda for the working man, and I'll catch your ass down the reindeer road.